So I have a few of these Heathkit frequency counters that use the same kind of handle, and I only have one or two original handles. These things are unobtainium now. Even when you look online, you find the equipment, but the handles have been removed. You don't find anybody with spare handles. And I wanted my collection to be complete in terms of appearance. And first off, I thought, well, I can get some sheet metal bent up. Getting it contoured like this is a bit of a problem. And then this is some sort of an extruded rubber thing with some ridges on there for decoration. I think more than function. Maybe a little grippiness on the bottom. And then they curl around and go into those notches on the aluminum. It's not a bad looking handle. Oh, they also have on one side a round hole where a simple bushing goes in that goes through a hole in the side of the frequency counter chassis, and then the other side it has a flat side oblong hole that goes into a fitting like this, which has the same bushing essentially, but it also has this flatted area that goes up against a leaf spring that wants to lock it into 4 detent positions. Anyway, so I decided to replicate these, but I found that the setup I have in my home shop wasn't quite adequate to do it. I can't cut aluminum that thick neatly with my shear, or my shear won't do it at all. It's too thick, and the pieces are too large to use in terms of forming. I tried to figure out a clamp where I could just buy some aluminum, get it cut by somebody else, and then put it on my mill and cut these notches out, but my tests were garbage. So anyway, I went to my sheet metal fabricator, and he made up some pretty good approximations, including it's not quite a copy of Heathkit's notched oval, but it works. And indeed, he made up a few of these for me. These are something I could have made myself, but the amount of time it would have taken to set everything up and the amount he charged to do a few of them, it was cheaper to have him do it. And then while he was at it, he made up the bushings, although he screwed up and made them about half as long as I wanted them, but I think they'll still be adequate. The biggest problem then was coming up with something to replace, for display purposes, this black rubber thing. And what I came up with was a 3D printed design. It has the grooves on it, although they're not as fine as the originals. Doing it as fine as the originals would have exceeded the minimum resolution of my 3D printer. So I made them a little coarser, but otherwise the dimensions are the same. And they're rabbited on the edges. And then I made up these pieces here that the narrower part that lays flat there is the same dimension as the notch, and then the wider part that's vertical sits into the rabbets so that it locks in to this piece. And then of course you have to have an opposing one like that. Haven't got it adjusted quite right there. Yeah, so I think, you know, if you look at it closely, it's gonna be different from the original, but the color is pretty close. It's slightly glossier than the original. I've already test fit this, and it fits this perfectly. The problem is both the software I use to generate my 3D designs and the printing surface of my 3D printer cannot print the full-length piece. And this is one of the narrow ones. I have to make a couple for the slightly wider handles on the IB1102 and IB1103. Those are about another 5/8 of an inch longer, and those definitely are too long. So the only thing I could think of was farming it out to somebody with larger 3D printers. Price was prohibitive on that, so I ended up just redoing the design to make them half as long, and they're just going to be butted up against each other end to end. And there will be a little seam there, but hopefully it won't be visible unless you're close. I made the mistake of sanding these things to remove a couple of small burrs, and that of course leaves a visible line. That was a screw up on my part. I may touch that with some black paint, I don't know yet. Anyway, so those are going to go together with super glue. I have used the wire brush on my bench grinder to give a linear brushed look to it. Not as good as the factory job. I didn't quite get the satin look, but it's better than the rough aluminum look, and all the rest of it will be covered up by the plastic. Alright, there's the finished product. There's definitely a central seam, but it's not particularly unsightly. I think it came out looking all right. Okay, there's one of the new handles on an IB101. Roll it up to the lower detent. Looks decent. I'm happy with it. There really aren't too many positions where you can see the other side of it. Unless you tip it way back, then you can see the grooved surface. The seam is more visible here.